Greetings, Earth. Welcome to the Nostalgiaverse.
Hello and welcome. As always, your host, Katt. And today with me is Alex.
Hi.
And Nick.
Hey.
Today, we are going to cover a controversial topic, much debated in that sense, multimedia franchises versus their source material. And the reason we're covering this is because of all of the, books and comics and other things that have been made into films over the last, couple decades now. And the fans' reaction to a lot of these stories. Case in point, the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the X-Men films. Books like The Martian, which was made into a movie with Matt Damon. Michael Crichton's Timeline, which is an older movie that came from a book. And similar to that, a book called Labyrinth, which was made into a two-part miniseries. Not the one with David Bowie. Just to let you guys know. It's a good movie. And several other things. Jim Zobar's The Crow, the graphic novel that he wrote, which became a movie back in the early 90s. And they're wanting to do a remake. Please don't. And so many other things. Going into that, one of the most recent ones that just came out is Logan, which is kind of based on the Old Man Logan arc from the comic books, from the X-Men comic books with Wolverine. Both Alex and Nick have seen it. I have not yet, but I will be soon. And that's kind of what prompted this particular topic. One of the questions regarding this topic is when they do a movie or a miniseries or a series, TV series like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and so forth, Daredevil, etc., when they do films and television based on the source material that has been around, like in the case of the comic books, the Marvel comic books, for decades, we're talking like clear back in 30s, 40s with Captain America and all of this, should they adhere exclusively to the source material, in other words, not change anything, or should they be allowed some artistic license to give an interpretation of source material? That's kind of been the question. Take, for example, Transformers. It has been retold and recreated, redone multiple times from its beginnings as a comic book, a few months later, cartoon, in 1984. Now it's a live movie franchise, in which we're going into number 5 of the movies at this point, right?
Yes, last night.
Is correct. The last night, yeah. There's a lot of people that you have your purists who G1 is the only one, and then there are those who they come into it much later and they say, oh, this is awesome, and the original is kind of silly and campy. And then you have people in the middle who are like me.
And
if you stay true to the heart and soul of the source material, don't change the origin, or at least not into something that is completely different, and keep the characters true to themselves as their personalities, and bring in some of the things that are key touchstones for these characters. Try and keep it true to the heart and soul of the story, but give it a new interpretation, a new way of telling it. I think that has been probably the best way to do it that I have seen, because I've seen a lot of, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, we were seeing a lot of Hollywood remakes, and a lot of these remakes were crap because they completely deviated from the core, the source material. They fell very badly. Take, for example, Planet of the Apes, the original 5 movies I grew up with. I love those movies. I was watching the movies. I saw the live action TV series that came out the year I was born, actually. Grew up with these, and I loved them. In 2001, they came out with this new Planet of the Apes. And I'm like, oh, God, they're going to destroy it. They're going to ruin it. And I went to a convention, and this guy that I know that I met at the con, kind of acquaintances in passing. So I don't know him that well. But his name is Dragon Dornay. He's a actor, costume maker, martial artist, prop maker. He's done a lot of films. He was actually working on the '01 Planet of the Apes. He actually did a panel and he was talking about it. He said, there are 3 kinds of movies you end up working on. The ones that you can't wait to get done with and get away from. The ones that you enjoy but they're fun to do and then you move on. And then there's the ones that you can't wait to see them when they're finished. And this one for him was in that latter, can't wait to see it, even though he's intimately involved in it. From everything that he said, but he couldn't give away much, but he talked about his experience working on it. From everything he said, I went up to him and I said, you know what? I'm a huge fan of the original. I wasn't even going to consider seeing it. After what you said about working on it, I'm going to go see it. I went and saw it and immediately walked out of the theater and had made the decision, I am buying this on DVD, and I have it on DVD. I loved it. It was really well done. It kept to the heart of where it came from, the original films. Then we've got these 3 new movies, that the third one's coming out, War for the Planet of the Apes, with Andy Serkis as Caesar. So you have Rise of the Planet of the Apes, or Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, Rise of the Planet of the Apes now, and then War for the Planet of the Apes is coming out soon, very shortly actually. And I'm really greatly enjoying these. And again, yes, the details of the story have been redone, and told from in a different way, but the heart and soul of the premise of the whole thing is kept intact, and they did a great job with it, and they're continuing to do so. That's one of the successes that I see with giving your own interpretation, but keeping true to the source.
Yeah, keeping true to, right, like you just said, yeah, for keeping true to the source. I actually have something similar, except of course, I'm a 90s kid, so I grew up watching the cartoons of the Marvel Universe. So I grew up with the 90s X-Men, I grew up with the 90s Spider-Man. Then in 2001, the Spider-Man movie dropped. Now, bear in mind, hang on, I was born in 93, so I was 8 when it came out. And I was ecstatic because I had started collecting the comics because the cartoon hooked us on. I even looked into his previous background, found out that Gwen Stacy was his first love and that. So I got really into Spider-Man as a child.
Yeah.
And here's me, dead excited, thinking, well, if they're going to do anything, they're going to do Peter Parker's tragic loss with the Green Goblin. He's going to lose someone, and this is going to define him, and it's going to be a great movie. Unbeknownst to me, seen it, loved it, but was devastated that we didn't get to see Peter Parker that isn't trying to keep a hold of everything. Instead, you see the paranoid side of Peter Parker, where he's now trying to keep Mary Jane out of trouble and this, that, the other, through 3 films.
This is the Tobey Maguire film.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be completely honest, by the 3rd film, I was like, right, I just want to get this over and done with, because even the origins for Venom was slightly messed up. The actor, bear in mind, Venom was this big hulking thing. It's supposed to be the complete opposite of Peter Parker, who was puny, an average day Joe, and a normal geek. Venom's supposed to be this angry person, Eddie Brock, as we all know him as, who hates life. He hates Peter Parker. He hates the hand that he's dealt. And then he's given the symbiote, and he sees life together as a unit now with this symbiote. And then they basically just gave away Peter Parker evil, and let's not forget that emo scene. But then when the Amazing Spider-Man came along, the Andrew Garfield, I'm going to be completely honest, I loved the Andrew Garfield movies. The introduction to Lizard, amazing.
Yeah.
Then in the second film, if you haven't seen it by now, you're probably going to get spoilers. They give us that iconic scene where Green Goblin kills Gwen Stacy. Well, we can argue the fact that it's Peter Parker that kills her or not. But basically,
And
we
it's not
get
much of a
the
spoiler
iconic-
because it happened in the comics. So
yeah, except it was originally done. I don't think it was done in a clock tower, or it might have been. It's been a while since I looked it up. Anyways, they kept it virtually to the source material, and everybody shunned it because it apparently was bad. Even though I personally love it because it came from a good source material and it stayed true.
yeah. There's some things. Well, like I was saying, there's always a touchstone. There's always these touchstone moments. Sometimes individual characters that help define a particular character. For example, with Peter Parker, the touchstones for Peter Parker are his uncle, the death of his uncle, his aunt, his Aunt May being there, Gwen Stacy, falling in love with her and losing her, dealing with Green Goblin, dealing with, getting these powers in the first place out of nowhere. Like, holy crap, gets bit by a spider and poof, now he's Spider-Man.
The other iconic thing was finding out that the Green Goblin was his best friend's dad.
Right. And then Hobgoblin being his best friend, and the very specific touchstones for the character of Spider-Man. And as long as they do those touchstones properly and in generally not necessarily the right order, although in some cases they have to do it in a particular order, otherwise it doesn't make any sense. Because some of them you can take out of order, like which villains he encounters when. For example, he has to face Green Goblin before he faces Hobgoblin. But as far as all the other villains, they can kind of come in whenever, because there's no set point there's no set order as to when they can come in. Because other than Green Goblin and Hobgoblin, he can deal with any of the other villains at any time. Like the Vulture, like Sandman, like the Lizard, like
Katt. One of the ones I thought that would have made a really good villain for a really good story, and still, may I add, not CGI done, was Mysterio. Because Mysterio could have easily been a very good starting off villain for him. Because he's not powerful, he just uses illusions.
Yeah.
The costume's not that hard to make. Trust me, I've looked into this.
Yeah, you just need a fishbowl.
Pretty much. And if they were ever to do it, now thanks to having Doctor Strange, because the new cartoons have shown that Mysterio, his fishbowl, as we all call it, is actually a magical relic in the new cartoons. And it ties Spider-Man with the other hero in Marvel that lives in New York, which for some reason they all do, Mr. Strange.
Doctor Strange, yeah. And here's the other thing too. We've got 3 different Spider-Mans at this point, because we've got Tobey Maguire with the trilogy, and then we've got the Amazing Spider-Man, which was awesome, and he faces Lizard,
and Goblin with the second one,
right.
The Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Yeah, with the trilogy, he faced Green Goblin, Hobgoblin, Sandman.
It wasn't
Venom.
Hobgoblin. It was actually New Goblin, as they quoted.
Okay.
And Octavius.
Doc Ock, he faced a lot of his core nemesis. Well, in this new one, Spider-Man Homecoming, he's facing Vulture, but he's not doing it alone. Not an origin story, because we've seen the origin story twice now.
Not just
with
that.
Spider-Man and with Amazing Spider-Man. Now, we refer to his origin story in Civil War, in Captain America Civil War, because Tony Stark goes to talk to him, gives him a new suit, sets him up, gets him ready, and now you see Tony Stark the billionaire playboy philanthropist that he is, genius philanthropist, is helping Peter Parker. But he's trying to protect him at the same time. And so then Peter's like, all right, I need to do something. I need to, deal with this. And then he ends up dealing with Vulture. And so now we've got this whole new dynamic happening. And he's a high school kid. I love the line in Civil War. It's like, you guys remember that really old movie, Empire Strikes Back? And Rhodey's like, how old is this guy? And Tony's like, I didn't carbon date him. I don't know. He's on the young side. Like, wow. I love that line. I didn't carbon date him. He gets very protective. Tony does. Because when he sees Peter get knocked down and his mask comes partially off, which is kind of a nod back to something that happened in the comic books, he freaks out because he thinks that Peter's hurt. And, he's generally okay. He's got some bruised ribs, but otherwise he's fine. So he's like, you're done. You're going home. You're done. And he's like, but okay, I'm done. So he gets very protective of Peter because he put Peter in this position because he needed help. And so now he's kind of being that mentor, but he doesn't quite know how to deal with this kid because his father didn't know how to deal with him. And his father is very emotionally distant. And so that's all he really has to go on, his interaction with his own father. And so now he's kind of become this mentor to this kid, but he doesn't quite know how to deal with this kid because he's so used to dealing with adults. And he knows this kid's smart, but he's trying to be protective and keep him out of danger and yet let him be who he is, looking out for the little guy, as he put it, in Civil War. And so then he ends up facing the Vulture because we've seen the trailers for this. My thinking is that he's, based on the trailer, he's got this character that's coming at him. He's trying to deal with it. Tony's like, no, drop it, leave it alone. You'll only get yourself hurt or killed, and then your aunt's going to come after my butt for this. So he's trying to keep Peter safe, and Peter's like, look, you don't understand. This guy needs to be dealt with. And so now he's facing a new enemy, which we have not seen before, except for on the pages of the comic books. So we've got a completely new nemesis come in.
If you, sorry.
And so that's giving us a whole new arc to work from. One of the things that I liked on Amazing Spider-Man was that they hinted at Green Goblin. But they never ended up bringing him in. So that's the other possibility, because Green Goblin and Hobgoblin were the main villains, and they were the biggest as far as emotional impact for Peter Parker, because Hobgoblin being his best friend and Green Goblin being his best friend's father. So those two are the biggest emotional impact for Peter Parker specifically. But being able to see the Vulture, which is a completely new villain we haven't seen on screen before, which is going to be really cool.
Well, he's going to fight Batman and see who he's going to win. And then the Shocker. The Shocker is going to be revealed. The Shocker's already been confirmed.
Yeah.
It's going to be the Shocker and the Vulture, and see how this is going to play out.
Yeah.
So it's pretty much Batman and Robin all over again with Marvel.
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah, and that's another one.
Because Tony Stark is essentially the Batman, and Peter Parker is Robin, as it were, in that dynamic.
Well, I was talking about Vulture and Shocker, but okay.
Okay, so evil Batman and Robin. On the other side of it, because I've been kind of binge watching the MCU films lately, you go back to Captain America and the dynamic between Steve Rogers and Bucky. It's completely reversed. Because in the comic books from way back, you had this sort of Batman-Robin kind of thing. Bucky was the kid appeal. He was the little kid that, and they were like...
He was the kid that you could be.
Right, exactly. Following Captain America around and doing stuff. And then he kind of matures and he starts doing some of the dirty work that Cap can't be a part of because of the image he must maintain as Captain America. And then they brought him forward as the Winter Soldier in the comic books, and so then there's that, and then he becomes the new Captain America when Cap passes his shield to Bucky, because he can't do it anymore. He becomes nomad. You guys remember that story?
Well, he became nomad because he killed freaking President Nixon.
He became nomad.
Believe it or not, Nomad is then passed on to someone else.
Yes, who has his own Bucky, little kid.
It's the Nomad becomes Armin Zola's son
Hmm.
because Steve Rogers adopts him.
Yeah. He didn't he have his own little kid that was like his.
I think
'Cause I
so. I'm not
remember
100%
because I remember
sure.
a character that I believe his name was Nomad, rode a motorcycle, and had a little kid named Bucky that traveled with him. That was about like 6 or 8 years old.
Yeah, I think that's the case because Nomad had his own shield.
And it wasn't Steve Rogers. It was
Anyways.
somebody else.
But yeah, I totally see what you're coming on about. How it's a total Batman Robin situation. But I've also just realized
in the original comic books, but in the movies, what they did was they did a reversal. They kept Steve Rogers with his original origin, in that here's this frail, 5'4", small, skinny, sickly, poor health
nerd, as to say,
guy, and he gets brought into this, and he's chosen for the super soldier thing, and becomes Captain America. Well, with Bucky, they reversed it, where they were best friends since they were little kids. When one of the things that I learned is that in the backstory, which they don't cover in the movie, but it's in one of the tie-in media, is that Bucky and Steve, when they were kids, we're talking grade school, okay? And here's little Steve, and one of the kids at school starts beating him up, and I don't know about any of you, but I remember clear back in like first, second, third grade, there were bullies. Okay? So it could have been that far back very easily. And here's Bucky, and he sees this little kid get beat up, and he steps in, and he's like, he goes to step in, and this little kid is like, he's tenacious as a Jack Russell Terrier. He will not lay down. He will not give up. He stands up, kid knocks him down, he stands right back up again. And that tenacity and determination kind of struck a chord with Bucky. And so he steps in, gets rid of the bully, and the two of them become very close, very, fast friends. They become best friends for life. And then Bucky later, the war starts with Nazi Germany, and he goes off to fight, but he's terrified that if he doesn't want to leave, because in my own head canon, the reason he's reluctant to leave is because multiple times he has rescued Bucky from getting beat up to the point where he could have been killed.
You mean Steve?
Or Bucky saving Steve. I think that's what I meant. Anyway, Bucky saving Steve from getting beat up to the point where he'd end up in hospital or dead, because beat somebody enough, you can kill them, even accidentally. Or he got sick to the point where Bucky had to take care of him, and if he didn't, we're talking the 1930s, 1940s here. Medicine wasn't that great at that time, and people more readily died from illnesses, especially if they weren't very well off. These two guys, I'd imagine, were probably lower middle class, like a lot of people at the time. And the 30s, you're talking the Depression. A lot of people died from illness and starvation. And so Bucky was taking care of Steve and from dying. When he lost his parents, he was 18, and Bucky was there. And they actually show that scene when Steve was 18 and buried his mom after his father had died. Tuberculosis was horrendous at that time. That's what his mother died of. And Bucky was there, and he spent years of his life taking care of Steve. And when he goes to go off to war, he's terrified that he goes off to war, Bucky's either going to get, or Steve's going to get sick or beaten up, and either of those two, he could potentially die. And so Bucky would come back from the war and find that his best friend died, and he wasn't there to take care of him. And it's probably Bucky's greatest fear. And so that's why he was so reluctant to leave. And yet he had to. He had no choice. So off he goes, and Steve enters the Super Soldier program, goes doing USO tour around the U.S., goes over to England, over to Europe to, rally the troops, and then finds out from Peggy, actually, that part of his audience was what was left of the 107th, Bucky's unit. And so then he finds out Bucky didn't come back. And he's like, I am going to tear Hydra apart until I find him and anybody else can get a hold of and rescue. So he goes single-handedly, rescues over 400 guys, almost 400 guys, including his best friend. And so that starts a whole thing. It kind of gets a role reversal where Steve is now taking care of Bucky in a way, and they start coming into this sort of equal standing between the two of them. Because for a long time, Bucky was taking care of Steve, and now Steve was taking care of Bucky until Bucky had gotten strong enough after what Hydra had done to him to be able to stand on his own again, and then they stood as equals as they go off fighting Hydra and wiping all these bases off. And he loses Bucky, and then 70 years later, after Red Skull is dealt with, he wakes up, he thinks everybody is gone. Everything he ever knew is gone, including Bucky. And then Winter Soldier happens, and oh, well, crap.
But that shows sometimes the source material isn't 100% better. Sometimes the mainstream media is a little bit better than the source material.
Yeah, and if you actually took the origin from the comic book, the way it was written, the costume and everything, it ends up becoming like 1965 Batman. Very campy, silly.
Here's another example of something sticking. Bear in mind, this was in the 2000s. Mm-hmm. Sticking to its original source, mm-hmm. not deviating, and making it a little bit darker. Ben Affleck's Daredevil.
I liked that one.
I liked it, but it shows how campy a character can be when you try to add a darker tone to even what was basically a character that could have been a joke at one point.
Oh, yeah. And the whole thing with Hell's Kitchen and Daredevil and everything, I mean, it was a great story.
Oh, yeah.
There are some aspects of it that could have gone better. I actually have that Daredevil and the follow-up Elektra movie. I actually have both of them on DVD. I personally enjoyed them for what they were. It had its off moments. And when you compare it to the source material, it does stay true to the heart and soul of the source material for the most part. But they tried to rush too much of it.
Now, if you compare it to the Netflix TV series Daredevil, mm-hmm. it's still true to the source material, but it takes a lot longer to get into the actual suit and that. Because they show off that he wasn't just first a man that took up fighting super enhanced?
Enhanced senses, yeah. Because he lost his sight and he had enhanced, sonar-like hearing. One of the things that I loved about the movie was the way they treated his vision, the way he could see, is basically sonar echo, three-dimensional sonar echo, which was really cool, I thought. And the change with Kingpin, instead of a big fat white guy, is a big burly black guy.
May his soul rest in peace.
Oh, I love him. I miss him very much.
Yeah.
He was awesome. But this big, burly, badass black dude ruling Hell's Kitchen made more sense realistically.
Oh, yeah.
Than a fat white guy in a suit. So, yes, they made some changes. But the changes fit to make sense in the real world.
It's like I said, it shows problems sometimes when they try to keep the campiness with the grittiness. Mm-hmm. Here's another one that got turned on its head. The 90s Batman films. Two of them were completely dark because they were done by Tim Burton, but then they got dubbed too dark for children, and then they turned into Batman and Robin and Batman Forever.
Mm-hmm. And every time, every outing, it was a different guy playing Batman. It drove me crazy. It did. It drove me crazy.
It wasn't until Christian Bale took the cowl on that we got that perfect blend of gritty, dark Batman, but slightly kid-friendly. And I say slightly.
Slightly. Very slightly. Okay. I saw Batman Begins at the IMAX theater, and seeing a 30-foot fire-breathing nightmare horse was just bloody awesome. Sorry. I loved that scene. Oh my god. It was great the way they did it. And I have the Dark Knight trilogy. I love that trilogy.
This is probably where I'm going to get killed by people. I love the films, but my biggest pet peeve with it is, yes, Batman never had a voice modulator, but Christian Bale sounded like he smoked 40 Marlboros a day just to get that voice.
No, he just growled. No, he just growled his voice. You can, like, you hear me the way I normally talk, and then I do like this, and it sounds like a completely different person, you know.
Well,
so it's in a way it helps to disguise his voice, and it works.
What I always found was a bit of a problem for me though was when he did that, but then he used to talk under his breath to his co-workers, and nobody that worked at Wayne Tower luckily has never met the Batman, otherwise they might go, wait a minute, I know that voice. And it still gets to me that Bruce Wayne, a public speaker of his own company, talks to these criminals in a slightly gritty voice, which doesn't sound much different from his normal voice, and we're just going to go with the assumption that every villain in Gotham is thick. Because who would try and rob somebody on a night where the bat signal's up?
The Joker.
Well, yeah.
But he likes a beating.
He enjoys it a little too much.
Batman cannot coexist without the Joker. It's been proven. It's multiple counts.
Oh yeah, I love that scene, and it was completely improv, where he's sitting there and they're in the cell and they're talking, and he just total deadpan just starts clapping, and that was not scripted. I was like, that was beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
I'm not gonna kill you. What would I do without you? You're a freak like me. And I hate to say it, he actually told him the truth. Like, when they don't need you, they'll cast you out. And he actually, even though he was a molecular asshole, but still, he proved the point.
He did have a point. And that's one of the interesting things with that particular character and that particular story is that the Joker knew, he understood, and he pointed it out. You know, they decide they don't like you, they don't want you, they're going to cast you out. You're going to become persona non grata. They're going to hunt you down. Well, okay, look at what's been happening in Marvel, not just the MCU, but in the comics, the various X groups, X-Men, X-Factor, X-Force, Excalibur, etc.
Let's not get into the Marvel Now 2.0 thing going on right now with the X-Men. It's just messy.
Go back at any point.
Oh, yeah.
You've got mutants, or enhanced individuals, as they call them in MCU, people with these powers, these abilities, these things that they can do as essentially superheroes. Collateral damage. Suddenly, because if you look at what's going on in the MCU, the catalyst for Civil War,
the Soviet Accords,
the Sokovia Accords, the collateral damage the governments decide they will not tolerate, even though it's not the Avengers' fault, secretly to save lives, and these criminals will do anything possible to destroy as much as possible so that the Avengers get the blame.
I'm going to be completely honest here. I kind of, a lot of people are saying it's not the Avengers' fault. Well, first off, the first Avengers, Loki, is brother to who?
Thor, but he has no control over what his adopted brother. does.
Ultron was created by who?
Tony Stark. But, again, he had no way of knowing that the Mind Stone would... You do realize the Ultron program, where it originated,
Yeah,
it
Jarvis.
It wasn't Tony. It was Hank Pym and Howard Stark. Ultron program originated with Tony's father and Hank Pym.
That crossed with Jarvis's AI and the Mind Stone.
Yeah, the Mind Stone latched onto it, gained consciousness, and that's what went wrong because the program was not finished, and it had no experience, no understanding the way Jarvis did, and so it became perverted. And that was not something Tony could have ever foreseen. Realized that it was incomplete. Also, the reason that Jarvis, once the Mind Stone was attached to the body and Jarvis implanted, Jarvis's experience over how many years?
18 at most.
Understood humanity through Tony and Tony's intentions, and thus was not corrupted by the shadows within the Mind Stone, which was corrupted by who? Big purple guy, Thanos.
That, you know what I kind of like compared to that is a very sound. Have you seen Ultron's original story though with the comics?
Mm-hmm.
His original origin story. Now I'm going to go loosely here because there's been many.
Yeah.
Was created originally, had a drone. Hank Pym had created a drone that was known as Ultron, and he wanted it to be a police force because he had created his own micro jail where he would shrink down the villains and put them into this jail. And it would be, and then entailed putting glass. But the Ultron drones were able to shrink down in size and feed the prisoners and cope with a riot.
Mm-hmm.
But then Hank Pym went, oh, you know what? These guys need to be a little bit more intelligent. I'm just going to copy my brain onto them, and then it just goes to shit, basically.
Yeah. Because the program, the original program, and the copy of his own mind, because the human mind is a very chaotic, very noisy place. It gets twisted and corrupted and becomes this very, very dark thing. That's why, in the comic books, why Ultron turned on everybody.
Well, we also found out as well, thanks to that Hank Pym also had his split personality or disorder, where he became Yellow Jacket surely not long after this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's funny how you slapped around on Jan.
I know, I actually own this comic.
That was kind of messed up. I'm like also how how Mr. Fantastic slapped Sue really hard just to knock her out of her bad girl face. I'm like, wow.
But the thing that I'm disappointed at is that we're not getting to see Yellow Jacket as a Avenger. He's now in the Ant-Man film, the Yellow Jacket suit, which for me as an Ant-Man fan, I love the original version, but I also like this new version.
Mm-hmm.
I'm torn between the source material and the multimedia
the movie, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a funny thing too, because Anthony Mackie, who plays Falcon, wanted them to put him in the spandex suit, and they didn't. And he's like, "But," and he keeps going on about his beautiful, muscular legs. It's like, wow, dude. But he has fun with it, and it's and having it, because with Falcon originally, the wings were part of him, and he had a bird called Redwing that flew around with him. In the MCU, Falcon was part of a very special task force, the Exo Falcon suit with the wings, and him and his partner, his
wingman,
Riley, were part of that program, and he lost his buddy, his best friend. And so he sees Steve, and they come to an understanding, because not only does Sam treat Steve like another soldier, but he understands what Steve went through losing his best friend in the war.
Unlike the new versions, the current version, I mean, where Sam is just a kid that has the ability to talk to birds and has been trained by the Avengers and S.H.I.E.L.D.
Oh, in the comics?
Yeah, in the comics, he's been trained by the Avengers and S.H.I.E.L.D. at the same time, but also is able to talk to birds.
Mm-hmm.
Hence why he's able to talk to Redwing and scope through it, and it gets very complicated.
Yeah.
But the weird thing is, now, currently in Marvel Now, which is the Marvel 2.0, there are 2 Captain Americas.
Steve Rogers and who?
Sam Wilson, the Falcon, is now known as Captain America.
No, he's Captain Falcon.
I wish.
What?
I call him Captain Falcon. I'm sorry.
Licensing reasons, they can't call him Captain Falcon.
I call him that. Have you seen his Falcon punch?
Ouch.
But yeah, it's really messy right now. Some of the Marvel fans have to identify them by their real names, so you don't automatically assume like Steve Rogers when you're talking about Sam Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
And he's currently disgraced, and let's not get into the horseshoe.
No, I know. But you can kind of see how when you deviate from the source material, even when the source material deviates from itself, you run into all kinds of weird conflicts. I remember when the original Age of Apocalypse series happened. I have those comics. Every single title had 4 issues. There was a 4-issue lead up, and then every single title had 4 issues within the Age of Apocalypse, and then they had a resolution for 4-issue resolution, and then every single title, I have like 6 or 8 issues each title from right after, because the Age of Apocalypse basically became the catalyst for a reboot of the entire Marvel universe. It completely altered and didn't start everything over from scratch, but it changed a lot of things.
You could say that with the Age of Apocalypse film.
Yeah.
Even though everybody pans it, they are setting up for a reboot of the X-Men franchise.
Yes, and it's basically the same thing as the Age of Apocalypse story arc from the comic books.
Yeah.
That's basically, they're following the source material. They just did it a little bit different way.
I would love to see how they expand, like they kept the Age of Apocalypse universe, and love to see how it expanded, not just for the X-Men, but the other Marvel characters as well, and see how far they would have gone with it. It's like, we're talking about the X-Men. What's going on with the other people? I mean, they stated right there Captain America was still frozen in ice at that time, but they did a what if. Captain America thawed out of that ice during the Age of Apocalypse, but I would love to see...
Alex, I think there's an Earth, because, Marvel's vast multiverse, there's an Earth called Earth Apocalypse, I think it is, where it continues on from the events of Age of Apocalypse.
Yeah, and here's the other thing, too. We have seen the Avengers and the assembly of the Avengers and the characters within that team in their own films. Getting a Black Panther film. We've got 3 Iron Man films. We've got 2 out of 3, we've got 3 Captain America. We've got 3 Iron Man. We've got 2 out of 3 Thor.
It's technically Thor Hulk, because we haven't had a new Hulk film.
No, not with Mark Ruffalo.
It seems to be Hulk is in the Avengers. He has had a pretty rough movie set.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, I think they need to do Planet Hulk.
Well, actually, technically, a funny story, when I went on the extras for Doctor Strange, and they showed a little bit about Thor Ragnarok, Thor is wearing his gladiator outfit from Planet Hulk.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So that's going to come into play. That's actually going to come into play at some point during the next few movies. I don't know if it's going to be Thor Ragnarok or if it's going to be the Avengers.
It's going to be Thor. It's in Thor Ragnarok because they show that I think Thor was fighting the Hulk and it's his Planet Hulk outfit, Gladiator outfit.
Yeah. I don't know if it's going to be in Infinity War or if it's going to be Thor Ragnarok though, because Thor Ragnarok is kind of a little bit different. Because that's dealing with a lot of other things. It may be too much, so we'll have to see where that comes into play.
This is Marvel. Nothing is too much for them.
True. Look at the Avengers.
Look at Infinity War .1 and .2.
I know. We've got Guardians of the Galaxy, which is funny. Oh my god, so funny.
Actually,
and then Volume 2 is coming out to be even funnier. I love it.
Isn't the Miss Marvel film supposed to be starting soon, or has it already started shooting?
Don't know. I know we've got Ant-Man.
Ant-Man 2 is coming
Ant-Man
soon.
Movie, and then we've got
It was called Ant-Man and Wasp.
Yeah, Ant-Man and the Wasp is coming out not this year but next year.
I want this guy, the guy from the first Ant-Man movie, recap everything. Yeah, that guy. The guy who recaps everything in an Ant-Man movie and recap the entire Marvel universe in yeah.
Right. I've actually got some comic information for you about him.
Oh.
Scott Lang's friend, the one everybody loves, in the recent Ant-Man comics, and I'm afraid to say this, manages to get his hands on one of the Ant-Man suits.
Oops.
And he basically becomes the new Giant Man.
Oh, jeez. You know what I was hoping to see in Civil War? Because they're bringing Ant-Man in. I was hoping they would bring in his little buddies, the ants. That would be incorporated somewhere in Civil War, but they didn't.
Bear in mind, Ant-Man and Spider-Man were added in literally 3 months before it was meant to come out. So I feel sorry for the guy that had to do all the editing and all the shooting.
I know, right?
And the budget.
Yeah.
Come on, the budget.
The budget.
True.
I actually wouldn't actually think like Ant-Man inside Tony and with all the other electric ants shorted things out. Yeah, that would have been pretty better seeing that.
Well, don't forget, Anthony died in Ant-Man.
No!
Anthony. I liked Anthony. He was an ant with personality. He was awesome. I'm sorry, but Anthony was awesome.
To be honest, though, Scott Lang in the comic books, and I don't know how he does this, you know how he names the ants in the film?
Yes.
That is legitimately coming from the source material. He has named every ant under his authority, and they all begin with A.
Which is crazy.
Yep.
Absolutely crazy. And how he does that, it's like, wow. And that kind of, because Pym didn't name them.
No,
he gave them
Pym
numbers.
never named them.
He gave them numbers.
Of course, he's a dick that way.
And yet, Lang gives them names. He gives them identity, personality. To him, they're not just tools. They are friends. They are companions. They are essentially, in a bizarre sort of way, family. He doesn't control them. He calls to them and they come to him. He treats them like they are intelligent, self-determining living creatures. And so he doesn't tell them what to do. He asks them. He calls to them like he would a friend and say, hey, I need your help. Oh, I'm coming. And here comes, Anthony or Amanda or whatever.
Yeah.
And
there's another hero that's like that.
The fact that he names them all shows that in his personality, he does not consider himself above them, but equal to them. He leads them, yes, but he does not put himself above them. And two, the fact that he gives them all names that starts with A, and there's so many of them, and that he come up with all these names, all of them starting with A. It also speaks to his intelligence and creativity.
Last time I checked, he had somewhere close to 200,000, maybe a million ants under his influence last time.
Yeah.
So
and
yeah,
each and every one of them has a name that starts with A. That speaks to his intelligence and ability to keep them all straight, for one, and two, his creativity in being able to name them all with a name that starts with A.
right. Here's something that I'm a bit worried about as a fan from source material, because she's started off as a joke and then rapidly gained some fan base. And I got to admit, I'm a fan of the cartoon version of her and some of the same artwork and that, but I'm not 100% behind the recent comic version of her. And I've even said this to my friends, and my friends agree with me, and we all said the same thing. We all say the same thing. We can't wait to see Squirrel Girl brought to Marvel Universe.
Oh my god! She's cute. My only impression of Squirrel Girl is John Barrowman dressed as her at a con. Like, oh my god!
So, believe it or not, I can't remember how her origin came about. I'm pretty sure one of the joke was it was a radioactive squirrel bite. I'm not 100% sure.
Oh god.
No, she's a mutant.
She's a mutant. Yeah.
Oh, she's a mutant? Thank God.
Oh god.
Yeah, that's just bad. And actually, the Lego Avengers game, you get Squirrel Girl, and she tosses squirrels at people.
She's another hero that names every single squirrel that she's able to talk to. But I'm really worried because she's... How can I put this? She's very Spider-Man-esque from the recent comics. She's sort of like a Spider-Man Deadpool cross. She is fun, as in Deadpool kind of fun. She doesn't break the fourth wall, but she's got a sense of humor like Wade's.
Well, she is dating Iceman, so
yeah.
Wow.
What I'm looking forward to is Nathan Fillion as Wonder Man.
Oh, that's another one I can't wait for.
That's gonna be good.
He's actually dropping all the weight he has, and he's bulking up.
A little bit when he was doing Castle, he did gain a little bit around the middle.
I think he said he was trying to look like the way he looked back in Firefly, but a little bit puffier. I heard.
That's another hero that I'm gonna worry about until I see it on the screen, because it's weird. Wonder Man has a weird history. He becomes a hero, and then at some point during certain things, he becomes a villain. Then he's a hero. Then he's a villain. Then he's a hero.
He was a villain first, then a hero, then he went back to villainy, then he went to hero, then he went back to being a hero again. But still, that's an ongoing thing with Wonder Man. I want Tigress, damn it! I want her to show up.
Unfortunately, I think Tigress is going to be a Netflix series.
Got like Luke Cage.
No, that's Hellcat.
I know that, but I'm saying at the same time, Tigra might actually be another Netflix series, for the simple fact of the matter is she's not, no offense, Alex, she's not mainstream enough.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, but she's the most awesome furry ever.
Feral.
I said furry. I know feral, but I said furry just because...
Feral.
Uh-oh.
Feral from X Factor.
Oh, that feral.
I love her.
Dude, Wolfsbane's better.
Nah.
Wolfsbane's awesome. Damn it.
Sorry.
I like Feral.
If we're going off mutants now, I'm sorry. I'm majorly sorry. Excalibur, I am Captain Britain all the way.
Well, duh, where do you live?
Of course.
You know, there was actually a thing, somebody was commenting that one of the Howling Commandos from Captain America First Avenger, the British guy, I can't think of his name right off, but that he becomes Captain Britain.
Dugan.
Yeah! No. Not Dum Dum Dugan. The British officer.
I'm trying to remember him.
I don't remember his name.
Unfortunately, Captain Britain is a mutant. He's a mutie then. like Deadpool, he's not actually given mutant. He's not born as a mutant, but he's given mutant type powers.
Not a mutant. He got supernatural powers.
Yeah, his powers are mystical.
But
They are not.
Juggernaut's counted. Right, this is getting way out of hand now. This is how convoluted some of the story plots are
know,
now.
right?
No, he's pretty much like Captain Marvel and DC. He got mystical powers.
Just quickly say he's mystical, but he's classed as a mutant.
Fallsworth.
Fallsworth, yeah.
James Montgomery Fallsworth. I think. Hold on. Is it Fallsworth? Pretty sure.
Anyways, thing that I'm afraid to say to comic fans, I don't think the Marvel Universe is ever going to branch off into the alternate universes.
There's too much there.
No, I don't think it's too much there. I think it's the fact that, for example, though Fox has the rights to the X-Men, there is a alternate universe where Captain Britain doesn't become Captain Britain. He becomes basically Spider-Man of the UK and has a Union Jack Spider-Man uniform. There's the 1970s Spider-Man Noir, which is, a noir-styled gritty show. And I don't think that'll ever come to light for the simple fact is noir is out of phase. Like, when I say phase, it's out of fad. It's not a fad.
Fashion.
Yes, thank you. I couldn't think of the word there. Another one that I think is not going to get done, although Marvel could technically do this, and I'm just saying Marvel, if you're listening, you may have given up Deadpool to Fox, but you do have your own version that isn't a mutant. They have Gwenpool.
Yeah.
Who is basically from our universe, and I'm talking about real life.
Right.
And she jumped into a comic book somehow, God knows how.
Oh.
And because she knows she's in a comic book, she knows she can have the same. She breaks the fourth wall like Deadpool, but she also knows that she can't die because of popularity and this, that, and the other. So she now tests herself to the limit, quite literally getting stomped on by a sentinel.
Whoop.
And getting up and walking away from it. She has her own bag of tricks, except she has to pay for it every time she pulls something out. She loses it the next issue and then has to rebuy whatever's in her bag of tricks.
Yeah. Well, that dropping into a comic book, it reminds me of there's a song by a band called Aha called "Take on Me," and if you watch the video for it,
oh yeah,
this girl ends up being yanked into a comic book, and she ends up running around with this guy, and they get chased, and she gets shoved out of the comic book, and then she goes home, and you'd have to watch the video. But that's kind of, you said she goes into a comic book, and I'm like, that was the first thing that popped into my head.
But the reason why I'm mentioning Gwenpool right now is because there is a Marvel character that we all know that jumps from universe to universe, was in the end of the Guardians of the Galaxy cutscene, if you stayed to the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
If you didn't, you're not a true Marvel fan.
A movie fan in general. I'm doing that.
But if you've watched it to the end, Gwenpool tags along with the one, the only, Howard the Duck.
DuckTales.
Wrong franchise.
On the subject of media, getting away from comic books, we also get into books, whether it's graphic novels, which is not the same as a comic book. Take, for example, James O'Barr's The Crow, which is a graphic novel that's very dark, very gritty, very awesome. Similar in tone to Sin City, where it's all black and white. I saw The Crow, the original film, with Brandon Lee in the theater when it first came out. I have The Crow on VHS with the interview with Brandon Lee. I've got it on DVD and I've got it on Blu-ray. I also have a 12-inch Todd McFarlane figure of Eric Draven. Yeah, I'm a fan. But it goes back to the source material, the graphic novel for that. And there was a lot of, because of what happened during the pivotal scene that starts the entire story, the accident that happened that took Brandon Lee, they had to do some changes. And there was a lot of things that, they still had like 2 or 3 weeks left of filming. And so they had to use body doubles for a lot of stuff. And they had to redo a few scenes that didn't get finished because of it, including that one.
Mm.
So, and the guy who was
The body double.
no, the guy that was playing Fun Boy.
Yeah.
It was his prop gun, and he quit. He left acting for a while because of it, because it hit all of them really hard. But yeah, again, you're talking about an interpretation of the source material, but it stays true to the heart and soul of the source material. And it does follow the overall arc of the original story. The only reason that things were changed in certain instances the way they were is because of the accident. They're wanting to do a remake of it. I'm like, no, just no.
You've just jogged my memory for something as well. When you say graphic novels and something else about the crew. There's a franchise that stayed true to its source material, but suffered because of the time it came out and its budget. If you know what I'm on about.
I think so.
Tell me what you think I'm on about, and I'll tell you if I am. It was in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
It was You've just mentioned the company that owns the rights to him, and he is an anti-hero.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, Alex knows who I'm on about.
I have an idea. I just can't think of the name at the top of my head.
No,
not the
Punisher's comic book.
I will say the company if you can't get it.
Is it Dark Horse?
Todd McFarlane Comics.
Spawn.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
because they did the 2 Spawn movies. I think there was 2.
One. There was only one Spawn movie.
Oh, I thought it was, for some strange reason, I thought it was 2.
Todd McFarlane has only come out and he's doing a new Spawn movie, or it's a continuation of the previous one. Either way, I'm happy.
Yeah.
But Spawn was really set in a dark, gritty environment.
Oh.
They kept the tone the same.
Yeah, I remember seeing it. Like, crap.
Like I say, they kept everything down right. Hell, they even had practical effects.
Mm-hmm.
They had, even the Violator was an original as well. That ended up, like, the giant head that they used when he was being attacked on the roof. But the major problem with Spawn was its timing.
Yes. It came out at the wrong time. And that's it was too dark.
It wasn't actually considered too dark. It came out at the wrong time. It was the end of the 90s when the superhero films were getting campy. No offense to anybody, because I know that word triggers some people. When, for example, it was the exact same year that Batman and Robin came out.
Yeah.
And people wanted to see cheerful comic book films, like kid-friendly comic books. That's the only term I could come up with.
Mm-hmm.
And Spawn challenged that, and it suffered
badly.
And I'm a massive fan of Todd McFarlane. Huge. It's the only reason. Sometimes, like I say, following the source material, you can do great things, but you've also got to have timing with it.
Yeah.
For example, 1984's Fantastic Four film?
Wasn't 84.
But you get what I mean. It was like it was before the 90s. The original Fantastic Four film. That time.
Oh, that one.
Yeah, the early one.
Oi.
Yeah.
Oi. The Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer. I love those. I have them. The one that came after it, no. No. Sue and Johnny Storm are biological brother and sister. If you're going to change their ethnicity, you change them both. You keep them if they had taken both Sue and Johnny and made them both black, I wouldn't have minded. You keep because they are biological brother and sister. You keep them the same ethnicity. You do not change one without changing the other two. So, just saying.
Yeah.
And that's why I wouldn't even touch that movie. On a we're going to have a pause here, and for those of you who are following along, we're going to have a part 2 coming out very shortly to cover more in depth into books. Since we'd covered a lot of comic books this time around, we're going to go into novels that have made it to screen. So join us next time and see what kind of fun things we get into for the next part of this endeavor.
Yes. I totally messed that up, but it was fun.
It's fine. In case YouTube
Yes.
comes right.
And thank you for listening, and see you guys next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.